We were sitting in the college cafeteria talking, and one of our friends was very excited because she'd been asked to give the Christmas sermon at her hometown church. I lived in West Virginia. She lived in New Jersey. And I made a joke about how funny it would be if I just drove past that Sunday and waved and disappeared. And I quit telling the joke because somewhere in the midst of that, I had decided to do it. I was old enough to know better, but, well, let's just say I wanted to make a big impression. And I kind of have this tendency towards grand gestures, and it seemed like a fun idea. I didn't know how I was going to do it. I knew I shouldn't do it, but I went to work trying to earn the money to do it. Figured out just how much gas the big old station wagon would take and how much oil, because what it didn't drink, it was actually spitting out onto the engine. And this car had been known to break down and leave people stranded, including the day I drove it home from buying it. But I had decided to do it, and it was stupid. But I was also in a long streak of making plans and not seeing them through. I was in a serious rut, and I needed to do something to break out of that rut. So it was stupid, but it was necessary. And the morning after Christmas, I found myself on the road to Jersey. Now, along the way, I had talked to her parents. I don't quite remember why, but I wanted to tell them and surprise her. And they insisted that I stay a couple of days. Well, okay, I could take advantage of that. Wasn't quite the original joke, but fine. And of course, by the time I got there, they had told her, because they didn't think surprising her was such a good idea. They were right, it would have made a mess. And to tell the truth, well, most of the trip was a mess. But we did walk down to the edge of the ocean that night, and I got to see, well, some fairly angry waves hitting the rocks and splashing into the air and flashing white. It was the first time seeing the ocean, and it was impressive. Another day we walked out when things were calm as could be, and you could hear the water just whispering on the sand. And actually, on the trip, I got to see my friend in her home environment and understood. I knew her better then than any other time. And then I headed home. And I got near to Cumberland, Maryland, when the turn signal started blinking slowly. Unfortunately, I knew what that meant because it had happened before and we had fixed it, I thought. But it meant that there was no power going to the battery and the car was going to die. I drove on to Cumberland, pulled into a gas station there shortly after 5 o'clock or so. The mechanic had gone home, and I didn't have the money to fix the car anyway. The way I figured it, I had barely enough to get home. Well, I left the car there and went and called Dad. Way before cell phones. Found a payphone. And he said, well, it's too late for me to come and do anything. And he suggested that I go to the police station, ask them for help, and follow their advice. And then next morning, I could try driving the car home when I didn't have to use the headlights, and maybe there'd be enough power to make it. Well, I was shy and naive, and I did not like the idea of going into the police station. So I went to a 24-hour donut shop with the thought of just sitting up all night drinking coffee and eating donuts. That's an awful long way to spend the night. I ended up taking a walk around Cumberland. And I knew nothing about Cumberland, didn't know where anything but the coffee shop and the gas station were. And I looked up and found myself in front of the police station. Well, people have known me to be pretty dense, but I can take a hint if it hits me hard enough. So I went into the police station and explained the situation, and the officer there got onto the phone. After a few moments, he said, well, the Union Rescue Mission is at the bottom of the hill. They have one bed available, and they close the door in 5 minutes. So I got to the Union Rescue Mission in less than 5 minutes. And I'll admit I was more than a little nervous lying there in my brand new Christmas clothes with my brand new Christmas watch. And when they opened the door at 6 a.m., it was still dark, and I left anyway. Headed back for the gas station. And it turned out that the guy on duty the night before had put my battery on the charger at no charge. So I had a full charge on the battery. I still had to wait for it to get daylight, but once it did, I headed out. No headlights, no heater, blanket across my legs because the wind was blowing in mighty cold through the speakers in the doors. And every now and then I'd use the radio just a little bit to stay awake. But I had to make it all the way across West Virginia. It's a fairly long drive. And I made it. I pulled in behind the house with 1/8 of a tank of gas, 57 cents, and a stone cold battery. I turned the car off, turned it on, and all it did was click. But I made it. I had gotten an idea, made a plan, and carried it out. It was stupid. It all went wrong in so many ways. And the young woman I went to see was not impressed. But I did it. And it was many years after that, Dad had since died, when I came across a postcard from a young woman in New Jersey to Dad. And that was when I first heard the story of how Dad drove a beat-up old car from West Virginia to New Jersey to try and impress a young woman. So he had known all along what I was trying to do and pretty much how stupid and futile it was likely to be. And he never said a word about it. And I didn't know to ask. But it turns out that there are some pretty strange things that can run in the family. Well, I hope you enjoyed the story. Got to laugh at how stupid I was. Hope you will subscribe, click the thumbs up, make comments, and share. And come back again, because I have a whole lot more stories, and a pretty fair number of them are about something stupid that I did and survived. So far, so long.